He gave us the lighter. Did you know about this?
I've heard about it, and I've never seen it.
All right, it's a beauty.
Yeah.
I don't think it works anymore. No. Ooh. But it's funny that he'd give everybody at a show a lighter. You know, like it's just not something you'd hear today. And on one side here it says, "Nice working with you," which is the kind of most sort of ironic kind of, nice working with you. Yeah. Take care. And the other side, it just says, 1975, Saturday Night Live to 1980.
Oh, that's great.
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week on My SNL Story, we're talking to Season 5 writer Matt Neuman, Brad.
Matt Neuman, yes, one of the new writers that came into SNL in Season 5, although not a new writer. He was the one seasoned writer as we get into, he had a career long before SNL, including Chicken Little Show, Lily Tomlin, where he met Lorne and thus, of course, got into SNL. Matt's a 3-time Emmy nominee, including for his work on Season 5. He is just one of 4 people to have worked on both SNL and Fridays, along with Larry David, Kevin Kelton, who we also spoke to, and Rich Hall. But he has the distinction, he is the only person to have gone from SNL to Fridays.
Matt is someone who has had a very long career, knows a lot of people in the business, and has worked on a ton of things. So it's a lot of fun to actually talk to him and get into all of this.
Yeah, and we get some great pre-SNL stories about Don Novello, Father Guido Sarducci, Franken Tom Davis, Chevy Chase, and then it circles back around to his return, Season 5 and Season 6. For those of you who might not remember some of Matt's more well-known sketches from Season 5, the Sports Hotline sketch, Bill Russell episode, All Time Radio with Harry Shearer, which Gary and I both love.
Love it.
Dave's Variety Store, Anytown, and I think one of the most infamous sketches from the Chevy Chase episode, You Can't Win. And we dive into that. That was fun. So there's a lot of stuff here, Season 5 centric. Enjoy.
Matt, it's so great to have you with us. We like to start every episode with the same question. When did you first hear of SNL?
I got to Saturday Night Live. I had turned it down originally. I worked on Lily Tomlin's show, and it was our first big job. My partner and I, Stuart Birnbaum, and I came down from San Francisco. So the big break for Stuart and I, and what led us to Saturday Night Live, or led me to it, was getting a job on the Lily Tomlin show.
Right.
And it was Lily and Jane, and we brought our tape in, and they loved it. They loved the Chicken Little show. And I remember Lorne came in. Came in from the side, opened the door, they were looking, it was a little screening room, and he came in and he watched for a little bit, and he wasn't critical. He just says, "Oh, well, that's it's kind of stuff you would do in college, right?" He would do that. It's like Stuart and I looked at each other and just like, oh boy. But Lily and Jane were sweethearts, and they loved it. Lorne, his manner was that way. He was just sort of. But my history of Lorne is interesting from there. He was always good at it.
Lorne.
No, he was being honest. He was right, but I wouldn't have said that.
Sure.
However, we got the job, and it was meant to be a series.
Right.
That was a special, but that was meant to be her series. They loved her then. She was nothing but Emmys for the networks. So we got the job, and Stuart and I was there. We were again totally out of left field because we had never done a TV show, and we were being paid by her manager, Irene Pinn, a marvelous woman. I say with a slight rancor. But it was our first job, and you're allowed to hire writers, I think it's still true, for like dirt for their first job. And then with that credit, you can join the Writers Guild, and then from then on, you're guaranteed minimum at least. Well, minimum was like $1,200 a week then. This was 1974. She got us for, together as a team, $250.
Oh my God.
But it was for the show. It was a credit on the show. For us, it was like we went out and bought a lobster when we got there. That's the best thing, right? And it was fun. It was like a fun house. It was great. And the writers were wonderful. Barbara Gallagher, Gloria Banta. There was Marilyn Miller, who I ended up living with. And there was Of course, there's Rosie,
Mm-hmm.
Earl Pomerantz's sweetheart, who was the younger brother of Hart Pomerantz, who was Lorne's partner in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we were on there for 12 weeks. But what happened was, by the end of the 12 weeks, they decided to just make a special.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just became one show. And it was a great hit. And the show went on to get all these other awards, but we went to the Emmys. And so we thought there were only two shows nominated for comedy variety. It was Lily's special and the Shirley MacLaine special. Although her show had no comedy in it. As we were about to stand up to accept the Emmy, which Lorne assumed that we had this one round table there, they give you one bottle of wine, it's empty. Everyone's, let's go, we'll get it. And we didn't know. Everyone's like this, and it's Shirley MacLaine. And then look, back down again. And that was a moment. Any case, the show was, obviously very successful for us. Stuart and I immediately became hot.
Mm-hmm.
Now we had new agents, and there was no problem finding work. And so we wanted to make $1,200 a week. So got immediately a job at the Jim Stafford Summer Show. Stuart and I met a couple other funny guys there, including Pat Proft was on it, who became a friend for many years, great writer. And Jim Stafford's manager, you may have heard of the comedian Gallagher.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ever heard of him? The guy who Smash Pumpkins?
Yeah.
He was Jim Stafford's manager.
Oh my God.
This is before he ever became a comedian. So that we were doing that, and I get a phone call from Lorne. So this is June, maybe.
Yeah.
I knew Lorne had already gone back to New York. Marilyn and I were sharing a place. I had a partner, Stuart, who was also fooling around with Rosie, Lorne's ex-wife. If I could maybe get any clearer, this was not an easy situation. I had no problem with Lorne. So he called Jim Stafford, and I knew I was calling. I think I knew he wanted me to go back to New York. I knew he didn't want Stuart to go back to New York.
No.
So I'm there, and I took the burden off of him. I said, I know what you're talking about. And there were other reasons. And I stayed with him. I said, but the main reason, one reason I told him, I said, I don't want to, because I knew it was going to be a late night show with
Mm-hmm.
late night fees. It's not like I was money hungry, but we had got nothing, it's like our first job. And now he wants to, after a short summer stint, go back to New York and work for maybe a few $100 a week again. And I'm from New York. I know how much it costs to live
Right.
in New York. And so I said, Lorne, I don't know how I can go back and, for $250 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's no guarantee, what he's going to do
Right.
is good. I had no assurances. I had more belief in what Stuart and I may be able to do or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a partner who he wasn't asking. I had a girlfriend who he hadn't asked, who I just worked with on the same show. And she did get asked eventually. She did go back later that fall.
Right.
So we sort of split, and Marilyn did end up back. And I know because I went back soon after, because my father passed away in November of that year while they were just starting the show. And it was actually the week that Lily was hosting.
Right.
So I was in Connecticut with family, and I brought my mother up from Florida and everything. And I just drove down. I wanted to see friends. And so I wanted to see everybody at SNL because I knew most of the people there.
Right.
I knew those writers. Tom and Al I recommended for the show.
Okay.
Tom and Al I knew. We'll get into Tom and Al when we talk about Bob and Ray. That goes back to their time.
Sure.
Just real quick.
Yeah, please.
When you went to the show that week, and like you said, you knew most, if not all, of the writers at this point. Lily is there, Lorne is there. How did you feel at that moment? Like, was there any FOMO, like any fear that you were missing out on this thing, or were you just like, oh, it's good to see everybody?
No, actually not. I never did. I always felt like I wanted to do my own thing. I watched the show. I told people about it. I was proud of it because I knew the people on it and everything. I was felt involved. I'll give you an example. The first year I got a call from Al Franken, and he said, Matt, we're not getting anything on. It's the first season. And because I had worked with a project with them called Tunnel Vision. And we wrote a bunch of sketches for that. And one of them was the thing I wrote called Jeopardy 1999.
No way.
Yeah, and it was the reason it was 1999 is because it was 1974. It was 25 years hence.
Yeah.
Okay. And they said, we is there any way we could use the Giant Jeopardy 1999 idea? And I said, sure. You know, and it got him. You know, that was a big deal, I think, for them. So that was nice. I was very happy for them. But no, I didn't. But that's interesting.
Well, before we get into the SNL stuff, Matt, real quick, I'd love to ask you how you got the Chicken Little show on the air, because I've heard this story and I think it's fascinating. So I just wanted you to tell that story if you don't mind.
This is exactly how it happened. I had gone to college out here at Occidental, and I graduated in '67. One of my best friends and classmates, after I'd been dodged Vietnam, I taught sixth grade for 3 years in Bridgeport, Connecticut, until the lottery came up. I got a high number, and I headed out to the coast, as they say.
Wow.
Got in touch with some friends up in Berkeley, and next thing I know, I was driving a hippie cab in Berkeley and living in this flat with no phone or TV or anything. And I got a telegram from my friend David, the guy I mentioned from Occidental. And he says, hey, I'm sharing a house down here with this guy who went to Occidental, but has been going to USC Film School. His graduate project is this film, and the star of his film was just committed to an insane asylum, and he needs a replacement. What are you doing for the next month? This is a telegram I get. I'm not doing anything. I'll come down there. So I go down. This Stuart Birnbaum is his name, became my writing partner. And Stuart was at his senior project called A Chicken Little Story, about a guy who walks around LA with a sandwich signboard that says, the sky is falling, the end is near. That was me, sort of a bum kind of a guy. The plot is irrelevant, but it was this really weird show. I went down, so we shot it down here and everything. And I came back up to Berkeley, went back to driving a cab. Stuart got like an apprentice job on Fellini's Roma. So he went to Rome, and he was working there as an assistant, where he met a beautiful young aspiring actress named Elisa Leonelli. And they came back together, and I get a call and say, hey, we're coming up north. What do you think? Do some shows or something up there. And I had a video camera, a Sony Portapack, which is where we were making a lot of little videos with. And I said, sure, come on up. She got a job at the local UHF channel, Channel 20, hosting Italian language movies. Oh, wow. This is a foreign language station, UHF. But the new owner used to own the FM, the hip FM radio station in KSAN in San Francisco. Long story short, she gets this job hosting these Italian movies, and she tells us, they're looking for hip programming after 10 p.m. Everything up to then is like Korean, Spanish, whatever. And why don't you come down, you guys? Maybe you can get a show. So we go down there, and we sort of audition. I mean, we weren't trained comedians, actors, nothing. We just were funny guys, all right? And so I picked up something from his desk, and I said, it was an electric shaver, and some jokes like this, terrible jokes. And he said, you guys are great. I'm giving you a 1-hour live show.
Wow. So
he gave us this is like, how does this ever happen?
And you're like 24, 25?
Yeah, I was 25, 1970.
Oh my God.
No, I was 27, and Stuart was much younger. He was like 24.
Okay. Yeah.
However, they gave us an hour's live in the studio. Mm-hmm. And it started out as a live show. I was Chicken Little, and I brought my chair down from my house, and I sat in front of a TV with a chroma key on it. Stuart would appear, and then we'd do all these. Every week was another parody of things with music guests and news parodies. It wasn't formulated every week like Saturday Night Live. We had no idea what we were doing. We were doing whoever's idea. Now, among the other people involved, one of them was Elia Kazan's son, Nick Kazan, who became Oscar nominated, I think. And John Lewis, who passed away, unfortunately, many years ago, went to Swarthmore with Larry Arnstein, and David Hurwitz, who ended up being writers on Saturday Night Live years after. Mm-hmm. And a few other guys. But it was basically that group was the Chicken Little group. Plus, a guy from Chicago who I just met out of the blue from mutual friends, this guy Chuck Stepner, and through him, Don Novello, who came out and was living out there and was working on some projects. And he said, I got this friend, Don. You want to do this Italian chain-smoking priest? He had an idea for this character. Mm-hmm. So it was great. And my girlfriend made the collar up for him, bought one of those felt priest hats at a costume store, got the robes. And he did Europe is My Beat, which I think is online available.
Yeah.
Very first appearance of on. So he was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we did that show, we went down to San Francisco and did like a film, 1 hour TV film called Beneath the War of the Worlds.
Right.
And it was actually distributed on videotape. And Franken and Davis were in that. That was the first time I think they ever appeared.
Right.
So anyway, so that was a Chicken Little experience.
Yeah.
And we came down to Hollywood, represented by William Morris, and Stuart and I, and this is coming into current events again. And this is all pre-Saturday Night Live.
Right.
73, late 73. Another agent there, George Shapiro. They send us over to him. He's Carl Reiner's cousin. And he says, I'm going to send you over to see Robbie and his partner, Phil. And we go over to see Rob. And this is where I'm still in a...
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And we have... And he was at Tomorrow Entertainment. I remember this in this building on Sunset. And Rob was already on All in the Family. He had a development team. Mm-hmm. And his friend Phil, and they were writing partners. So they were developing things. And we go and we show him Chicken Little show. Rob loved it. And now I'm going to say some things about Rob that I, worth putting on the record. What a wonderful guy this guy really was. He's 4 years, 2 years younger than me. But he had a lot of experience already. He'd written for the Smothers Brothers. He'd worked in the business, and his father was Carl Reiner. He grew up with Mel Brooks and all these people in his living room, which is the opposite of my upbringing. I grew up in New York and the Bronx, but I was not in show business. I was totally aware of it. I was a TV junkie from the time I was 3. I was in the Peanut Gallery when I was about 5 years old on the Howdy Doody show, and remember even that experience. So I was tuned in totally to the whole world of media, but I was not in it. I was just, like any other kid watching TV. But Rob, one of the very few people who I ever met who was generous with both his praise and positive criticism too, because we were amateur time. I mean, Chicken Little was funny, it was inventive, but it was not professional, polished comedy in any way. Right. If you look at it, it's me with the suit my girlfriend made for me, and that's So all right, so we talk about doing a Chicken Little-like show, parody of television, which was not done. Carol Burnett was mostly movie parodies, and the Show of Shows and all those things was Broadway and radio and parodies of things, the media that was up to then. But the medium that we're growing up with, they were not doing. The only ones that were doing that, which was a revelation to me, was Channel 1, the original Channel 1 in 19. That was the breakthrough show, I think, for everybody who was around. But they did something that was a revelation at the time. And when I saw it several times in different places and took people to it before I ever thought of going into this business. But it was a point that said, you can do this. This is, it can be done. This is a whole genre of comedy that has not even been tried. These guys are breaking through a wall that hadn't been done. Right. There's sort of propriety to the kind of variety comedy that was done in the and Chicken Little was like that, but so was Channel 1 originally, and Groove Theory. They were doing things that you couldn't do on television, basically. So Rob, Phil, and Stuart and I, we've got a meeting with the head of NBC for a summer replacement show, which would be based on what we brought them. Well, we go in, and Rob just they knew who he was, and he was already a star on television. It made it very easy. And he's telling the head of NBC, what the whole thing is about. We're going to make fun. Oh, the other thing Rob did is I wrote a treatment for this thing, for it, and I put it up. And Rob calls me and says, this is all correct, but it's all academic and intellectualized. I was writing stuff like, we want to tear apart the facade of, all the bullshit about trying to break through and that's never been done. And so he said, they don't want to hear that. These guys, they just want to hear, this is a show that's going to make fun of things on TV and it's going to be funny and blah, whatever. Simple, boom, boom, and out. And it taught me a lesson right away. And I've never forgotten that. ever. And that was like the first people I ever met down here. It was Rob Reiner, and Rob was him. So we go to this meeting. Rob sells the guy at NBC says, "Great, we'll put you on and replace the Dean Martin show." The Dean Martin show was on during the season, right? So they're looking for a replacement. This is how they did it. They had some replacement for them. And I never talked to Rob about it afterwards. I don't remember ever having it cleared up in my head. But Rob's agent, 1973, he said, "Okay, but wait, we don't want to make a decision just yet." So I remember we went out of the office, and never happened. Okay, it's just, and I just remember seeing that the replacement announcement was for the Dean Martin show was the Gold Diggers. It's like the Rockettes. They were like these women in Dallas Cowboy cheerleader outfits who danced, and they were on the background of his show. It was going to be the Gold Digger show.
Oh my God!
So that was, instead of a searing indictment of television and satire, we'll go with the dancing girls and the little short gold things. All right.
The next thing to really dive into and learn more about for me is the Bob and Ray, Jane, Laraine, and Gilda special that you were a part of.
Speaking of everybody intertwining with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the background of that is this. And it's in, Al wrote this book, King of the Senate.
Uh-huh.
He mentions the origin story for them of their act. I'm very grateful to Al for doing this. And Tom did it too. I got to know them because I go see Don play at the Comedy Store, and so I go see him try out Sarducci and whatever, and got some other friends that I got to know over there, and got to know Franken and Davis. They had a wonderful act. I said, "Why don't you guys come over to my place?" His book says, bring some beer, bring a few joints, come on over. I want you to hear something. I had just gotten this from a friend I knew from college. He had an old Bob and Ray tape. Now, I grew up listening to Bob and Ray and loved them. My dad and I loved them. They were on the radio all the time. And they were well known. They were pretty well known. But two guys in Minnesota, they'd never heard of them. And I said, "Guys, got to come over and listen to this. You guys will love this." Because their act sort of made me think, they love this.
Sure.
We listened to Bob and Ray, and it knocked them out. And as Al said in the book, it changed their perspective on their act. And he always thanked me for introducing them to Bob and Ray. And their act became more like, they used to be like Jack Benny, okay? They would do sort of Jack Benny. Then they sort of switched to Bob Elliott. They do the Bob Elliott kind of. It's funny how they're sort of, their interactions evolved. Sure. Yeah. Anyways, finally, so Tom and Al became more prominent in the writing pecking order, obviously. And they were always looking, apparently, for that fourth week, something to put in a fourth week during those years.
Yeah. Season 4, they did a lot of those special off-week specials.
Right. This was before wrestling became big, but they were always looking for those open slots. So he calls me and he says, "Matt, I think we can convince them that we could get a Bob and Ray show here." He said, "Will you come back and do that?" I said, "Oh, absolutely." And so they got Bob and Ray, Jane, Laraine, and Gilda, and it was terrific. And Jean Doumanian was assigned to produce it. Why? I don't know what favored Lorne. I mean, she was the talent coordinator.
Right.
So Jean produced it.
Didn't she also somehow get a writing credit? Isn't there a story about that, about Jean getting a writing credit on that special?
All right. So we wrote some things, and it wasn't hard to write a Bob and Ray special. The guys had 5 million pages of material, of sketches and things, and you want to do those sketches.
Yeah, it was a lot of their stuff, right?
You can't top some of the things they did. They were perfect. You just want to do variations or come up with some other goofy premise for them. So that was basically it. But the best part was to go over and to have an afternoon session with Bob and Ray, which was really the only time I spent with them myself until when the show was actually produced. I was already gone. I just was there for the writing of it. Went back and talked on the phone. So we go over to the Gray Bar building above Grand, right just north of Grand Central. That big old metal that's just empty, lots of empty offices, whatever. But it's Bob and Ray's office. So we go over, and we sit down, we have Bob and Ray there. And it was just delightful. We were just sitting there talking with a couple of idols, a couple of people that just listened to as a kid and then been still listening to on the radio. And so I had questions to ask them that I just knew would prompt funny answers. The highlight, as Al will remember, and only Al can remember it now. It's he and I.
Mm.
Jean Doumanian, all right, who had no business doing this. She pops in. She's everything going all right, boy. You know, she was going to see how we were all doing, getting along and stuff. This is our first meeting with the boys, and we said, "Fine, fine, fine." She closed the door, and then in that classic, Bob Elliott's nasal, he goes, "Is it Joan or Jane or June?" And Tom and Al and I are just absolutely in tears. Every time we saw each other, we just do that. Is it Joan or Jane? And then the ultimate outrage. If you haven't talked to Al yet about this, he'll tell you. Thankfully, he did this because he was back there. He called me. He said, "Matt, you won't believe this. She put her name on the script as one of the writers." I said, "What?" See, this is something, a trick you may have heard about. Not a trick, but most producers, if they feel they can get away with it, will put themselves in as writers, if it's a comedy show or something like that, and justify it somehow. Now, Lorne can justify it. He certainly can justify it.
Sure.
He doesn't write sketches. He doesn't write hardly anything, but he oversees it all and rewrites or changes things. He's as invaluable as a good writer would be, even if, So he would deserve it, of course. He's a comedy producer writer. That's the thing that you always look for. At least you have someone who's a comedy writer producing a comedy show. That's the way it should be done. But she was not. So what Al was doing, he'd go over with a Sharpie and he kept crossing it out on all the copies, every draft. But she got it. She got it in. And so she would get residuals and benefits as a writer.
As a writer.
Mm-hmm. And if she could build up enough credits, the health plan's pretty damn nice. But for not writing anything, it's also pretty good. So anyway, that was the side story. But that was the background of the Bob and Ray thing. It was because I introduced those guys to Bob and Ray, and Al, very nicely, obviously, but it's, we were friends.
So did that then lead to the offer for the show proper for season 5? Like, how did the offer for season 5 come back to you?
You know what? While I was there, we talked.
Okay.
I talked with Lorne, and I think basically, I think the offer was always there. It wasn't ever stated. I think if I had wanted to in season 1, even if I'd said, "Lorne, I've changed my mind, I'd come back," he would have been glad to have me. I know he respected me greatly. That I felt. But we talked about it. I remember driving around in the car a little bit and going up to his apartment, and I said, "Yeah." So that's how it worked out.
One of the things we found fascinating about this particular time is before season 5 was the first, I think only time, in that era that Lorne had that pre-season retreat in upstate New York with the writers and the cast.
Yes. Yeah.
Just wondering, what that was like, that experience.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was really nice. And it's Mohonk, it's called. Mohonk Country, whatever. And so it was just, like fun time, play time with occasional things in the dining area where we chat and whatever and ask questions. But everyone sort of knew everybody, so it was fun. I played a lot of touch football and whatever. And Swibel I got to know, who I did not really know well from before. And we became good friends. It's just a lot of camaraderie. But it was fun. It was a beautiful place. I remember a question I asked Lorne on behalf of my friend Chris, who probably should have been on that show early on. I always thought this is a great, perfect person for it. But I don't know if Lorne felt threatened by Chris Guest or not. I couldn't tell. But I did ask him. So he said, any questions or whatever. He was trying to just tell everybody, I don't want art pieces. I want stuff that's comedy, And I think he might have been directing that at me. I'm not sure. So I wrote some things for Lily that were more abstract and stuff that were not really for TV as much as they were more for Chicken Little, maybe, but not for. But it was a nice feeling to get to know everybody who you didn't know.
What was the question about Christopher Guest? Were you trying to get him on as cast?
Why didn't ask Chris to the show right, first? Because he was a good friend of mine, and I'd been working with Chris, going back a little bit. But in '76, I joined this group over at the Children's TV Workshop, but they wanted to do an adult show, and it was Christopher Guest, myself, Tom Whedon, who was Josh Whedon's father,
Yep.
and also in '76, Stuart and I produced a pilot called Flakes, starring Chris Guest and Tom Leopold. So we were doing that also in New York while Saturday Night Live was going on. So a lot of these things evolved from that period, just being there and its connections. So I'm sorry, I've lost track of where we were, but we were in the fourth season.
Yeah, no, but now in season 5, what was the sense you had going into season 5? Now that you're on the staff,
well, there was that sense of joining camp in the last couple of weeks of summer, but because I knew everybody pretty much, and I didn't have the nerves of somebody who hadn't been a writer on the show. I certainly knew what I was doing about it, so I felt actually quite good about the situation. And it was a playhouse, it was a fun house, and you could be there 24 hours a day, really, you almost were, and it was terrific. The procedure was kind of interesting, and it depended on the host, but there were some wonderful experiences just being there with certain hosts, for me at least. And Lorne was sort of like Bill Russell was a host of one show.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Russell is a huge figure, and so Lorne said, "Bill, why don't you just hang out with Matt for a while?" Because the host would come over on Mondays and just hang out, and we'd have a meeting that evening with the host, and people would throw out their ideas, and then everyone would go out for some dinner or something. But I had like a whole afternoon with Bill Russell, this great Hall of Famer, which I incessantly talk about with everybody whenever I can, because it's such a cool thing. And I was this huge Knicks fan.
I was going to say, were you not a Knicks fan though?
And I was pretty brash, so I immediately said, how the hell did you beat my Knicks in 68, 69? How did you do that? They had a better team. You know that. And he said, yes, I know they had a better team. We just outran them. We ran them. So it was wonderful. Anyway, that was just as cool as could be. And other people, he said, B. Arthur, you talk to Matt. He's an experienced writer. So B. Arthur spent some, it's just the strangest thing that you would not ever do. And it was great. Work all night. And then Saturday, I like especially coming in real early Saturday. So I Bell, myself, and Herb Sargent, who I loved. Al, maybe a couple others, but not too many really. We just sit around and go through stacks of AP photos. They'd have these 8x10s of every news photo that came. This is how it wasn't like on a computer screen. You physically had to go through these old black and white photos.
Oh, God.
And pick some out for maybe a joke or two. And then, so I was writing update stuff all day long. And it's an interesting process.
Did you find yourself, when you got there, gravitating towards anyone in particular as far as working with each other? Like, for some reason, I don't know why, in my mind, you as kind of an older, more experienced writer, and Harry Shearer coming in season 5, in my mind, I felt like you two would be, like, always together.
Well, I knew Harry. Harry was an old friend. I met Harry before Chicken Little, even at the Astro, which became the Improv. Harry was in the Credibility Gap, and they were there, and the Persuasions. And so I met Harry then. And then Harry became part of my historic basketball game. I started out here in the early 70s. And it's still going, gentlemen.
Are you really? God bless you.
But it involved a lot of people like Harry, and Walter Williams played for a number of years. Larry David was a regular in that game. After Fridays, he started playing, and Chevy came out once. But Harry, I knew from then, and also he worked on The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, and I wrote a draft of that film.
Oh my God!
And that's another story for another time.
Well, speaking of Harry, and I think it's something that you wrote. It's one of my favorite sketches from season 5. It's All Time Radio.
That's my favorite sketch.
That's good.
That's my favorite sketch because it gets the best spontaneous laugh. That's why a writer has to be honest, really. I mean, I'm sure, I hope other writers have mentioned this to you, that there is no greater thrill for a writer than to hear your peers laugh spontaneously at something that you wrote that they're hearing for the first time. And you only get that at a cold read-through. Mm-hmm. But the read-throughs at Saturday night were Wednesday afternoon. Boom, handed it to Lorne ahead of the table. Everyone got copies. Nobody's seen nothing. Pardon my grammar. It just Lorne would open it up. He's seeing it for the first time. Everyone else is seeing it for the first time. You're the only one who knows what's on your script. and they're going to hear it. And there's nothing greater than hearing people start to laugh or really laugh at something that you wrote. And there is nothing worse than to hear your piece read and to hear a pin dropped. I've had both, had both. I like all-time radio because of the fact that at first you think, oh, where the hell is this going? And then,
it's so smart.
Yeah, for years, that was the kind of thing. Harry's the best at that. He's one of the great mimics of radio voices of all kinds. It's a great performance by Harry. And I wrote another thing for him. He was in, and this was one, and it was the last show of the year. It was around this time of year.
Right.
And I know Walter had a Mr. Bill that got bumped, and I had a sketch that got bumped. And it was an ad for the year clock. It's a clock that only told you the year.
Yeah.
And Harry was the pitch man, but it got bumped. I had several things bumped, believe me. That's why I can't tell you how many sketches would get bumped that were in press. But sometimes pretty elaborate things, they just had no time for.
Yeah.
It's just, you go to Between Dress and Air and we'll say, well, we're 30 minutes over. So this goes. You have no choice. It's sort of like cut this, cut that.
Well, speaking of elaborate sketches, what percentage would you say, you can pick any number from, say, 1 to 1,500, what percentage would you say was Chevy Chase's fault, to blame for You Can't Win going over so poorly?
Oh, you could go to the top there. So you want the whole story about that?
I mean, it is a story, I'm sure.
I'm the only one who can tell it. Right. I knew Chevy also.
Okay.
And before I ever worked on SNL, he'd been over to my house. And I, again, like with Lorne, I didn't mince words, let's put it that way. And so I wrote a thing that was a very good piece for him, basically, a kind of a goofy game show host. And pretty basic idea. And he was so coked up, he couldn't. So now at the read-through, everything went great.
Okay.
The payoff was the mystery guest, right? And I had a lot of options. Initially, because Mick was in town, I thought maybe Mick Jagger. And so I remember there's a piano in the read-through room. So when the mystery guest was revealed, I remember Paul going, dun, 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 dun. Okay. But I decided to go with either Florence Henderson or maybe Bert Convy. Okay. And I don't know why. I just wanted someone, very banal, basic, a name. Oh, I've heard of that person. Not like wow or who, but someone in between somewhere. So that it's like shows you just how many celebrities there are. Is this person a celebrity? Yes, they are. But God, there must be millions. So that's how hard this game is. That's the point. And before the show, Bert Convy and his wife are there in the dressing room, and they go in to brief them and just to let them know, don't worry about anything. And he said, I hope he doesn't do, one of those things where he says, hey, thanks for coming, Bert, and makes me look foolish. I said, I'll talk to him, don't worry, don't worry. It's exactly what he did in the dress rehearsal. He did exactly that. He said, hey, Bert, great, we're going to must his hair, he did all that stupid stuff that makes you, makes the bigger guy always feel, the kind of thing that a Milton Berle might do, which was Chevy, a real forebear of Chevy in this situation. So, all right. So we go to the meeting between Dress and Air, and I look at Lorne, he looks at me, I said, Jesus, what are we going to do? And he says, we can't cut it. There's nothing to cut for time here. Just have him do the lines, and it'll be 3 minutes shorter. So, okay.
That's all. Just say the lines, Chevy.
Now, he had these cute, he had the cards like a game show host. I had the script girls, pardon the expression, write entire script for him on those cards. So he could read the script, and not just the cue cards, but he had it in front of him. So he wouldn't wander and then start ad-libbing. Well, the thing starts, it goes up. They're late getting a Garrett into his seat, who had his own difficulties at times. Yeah. So you can see Garrett just sitting down as they cut to, the guy who's supposed to be coming out of the audience. Right? Come on down. And Chevy does everything the same way, basically. And when Bert Convy comes out, he does the same bullshit. Oh, Bert, great to have you. You're a great guy. What a, So there's nothing I could do. It was, it's out of control. Just have to smile and let it go. And then at the after party, the first people I see are Chevy and Mick Jagger at the bar. Okay. And I go over and I ignore Mick Jagger and I just look at Chevy. I said, Chevy, you fucked that up, man. You couldn't get it. I'm just telling him. I said, I'm sorry. I said, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, it was like not unfriendly, but not friendly. Just telling him, you fucked up, man. You just couldn't get anything. And then I go in. The first people I see are Bert Convy and his wife at one of the tables. And they look up and they say, well, how did it look? Did we get embarrassed? Was it? And I said, oh, no. It was fine. It was, you're trying to be reassuring and everything. And that was it. I mean, what can I say? You leave it to nature, or in this case, Chevy Chase, because you really have no choice. Like a storm came in and couldn't do anything about it. But
one of the strengths, I think, of season 5 were the musical guests. Were there any that you met that stood out for you, their performance, or just them off stage, off camera?
The highlights of my life, Saturday, around 10, 11 in the morning, I'm guessing, but it was in the morning sometime. They would have the music group run through its entire business there just so they can get everything, the lighting and stuff, mics, placements, and all of that stuff straight. It's like blocking for the music group. Well, Dylan was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down to pastrami and things, grabbed bacon and cream cheese, picked up a New York Post, went up, just me, stage managers. That's it. Concert right in front of me, Tangled Up in Blue, playing it just like it's going to be played at that night. It's like going into a nightclub. Clear the nightclub out, please. I just want to be here myself. Bring a bagel. Like, yeah, okay, Dylan, go. I mean, virtually like that. It sticks with you. It's like, Jesus, what a privilege to just have that, And
did you eat your bagel while he was performing, or did you just hold off on the bagel? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I don't think it disturbed me.
Just sitting there relaxing. Okay.
Yeah, no, that would have been funny. That would have been a sketch right there. Wait a second. Stop the music, please.
Along those lines, how about hosts? Any host that stood out? I mean, you had your SNL standard bearers, your Buck, Steve Martins, Elliot Goulds were back, but there were almost a dozen first-time hosts that season, and a very eclectic group. Any hosts you were excited for or you enjoyed?
Yes, very eclectic. It was probably the oldest group of hosts. That was the oldest group of hosts there. There was a lot of people. Kirk Douglas, B. Arthur, Rodney Dangerfield. There's a lot of veteran, older performers and actors. Buck.
Bob Newhart.
Oh, that was wonderful. Newhart was one of my faves, of course, growing up. And so we had the Monday night meeting. I didn't take over, but I knew his stuff very well. And Bob, I just have to tell you, I remembered this sort of obscure variety show he had on in 1960, 61. And I remember the sketch that they had done. I'd never forgotten it. It was about this kind of meek guy who did the weather on a small TV station in Wisconsin. And every year at a certain time, they would do, I guess, a rating sweep for April's 1st or something. I'm forgetting the premise, but whatever it was, the ratings for this guy's show that one morning were through the roof because it was the first day of duck season or something, or duck hunting. And everyone tuned in to see what's the weather going to be like that day. And so the ratings service, Nielsen or whatever, gets wind of it. The network hears this guy on a local station is getting 90 shares, bring him to New York. And the next thing you know, of course, boom, 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 it's the Ed Gordon show. And this guy comes out to, hello, everybody. And he does the same, And I remember that as being just one of my favorite pieces that they pulled a guy out of there just because of one aberration. And the next thing you know, he's got his own show. And no, he was wonderful. He was terrific.
Yeah.
Rodney was great. It's funny. Rodney did the show, and I go into his room, and Don and I wrote the cold opening, where he has the script for the cold opening. It was kind of a clever idea. He has a script for the cold opening, and as he reads it, he's reading what is happening as he's reading it. Meaning. Yeah. It's virtually the thing Lorne warned me about the first time I met him at Lily Tomlin, suspending the audience's disbelief. Rodney was terrific. I love Buck. Steve Martin was great. It's it was not the easiest group to write for, some of them, because they were sort of like iconic figures. You ended up writing something that had to be of, by, and about Kirk Douglas. You couldn't really, there weren't too many, like, oh, let's make him a country doctor. Or something. You have to build a whole series or something to get you to believe that. It's still, he's Kirk Douglas, for God's sakes, So, who else was on that show that year? What's his name? Strother Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is interesting, and I'll bring it up haltingly, perhaps. There was this commercial running, I think it was for shampoo or something like that, and the people in it, they would talk to each other in a kind of way, would say, "Oh, that's the doctor, that's the college coach, or he's from the college," not names. Didn't have names. It was running all the time. I'm sure you could probably find it, and we'll find out what inspired me to write Any Town, which was about a town and done in sort of the Thornton Wilder Our Town with a stage manager. That's why I thought of it for Strother Martin.
Yeah.
He'd be perfect for the stage manager of Our Town. All right. So Lorne loved that. It was kind of a bit of intellectualism or what have you, and playing upon that. And so I remember I'm walking to the bathroom. This is between Dress and Air, I think. And Lorne comes in, and it's just he and I in the bathroom. He said, "Come in with me to the bathroom. He wanted to ask me something. He had a question for me." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What does this mean, this sketch? What does it mean?" I said, "I really have no idea. It just sort of came sort of flowingly out of that commercial, and that if you just went from the commercial and continued on, there'd be a town around it with people who don't have names. That's all."
Yeah.
We wanted to ask, it's something we try to keep in mind as we're looking back on the show some 45 years later. It's very easy for us to sit, people like us, and judge the show. I'm curious, having been through it, was there ever a point in season 5 where the show just kind of ran out of gas, or you're just kind of running out the clock for the end of season 5? Or was like to the very end, was everybody really firing, trying to get everything the best they could on the air?
No, I think the reason people may feel that is because they left, because they ended up leaving. I don't think anyone wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I do know this. In the final weeks when that Silverman thing was going on with Lorne and everything, Lorne was in my office, on my couch, lying down, like I was a psychiatrist almost, asking me, what should I do? I'm not sure. And I said, "I can't tell you what to do, Lorne. I just got here, But as far as I'm concerned, it'd be nice to continue."
So did that whole Fred Silverman, Al Franken thing, did that weigh on the show or play into the mentality going into those last couple episodes at all? Or was it more like par for the course, we're just making fun of NBC as usual?
Well, it was. I think it was in the background, but not. It was not something people were thinking about on the surface or publicly. When Al did that, I don't think anyone expected to have the effect that it did, and I didn't. I'm sure Lorne may have had contact with Silverman about this stuff. Maybe he was complaining. I mean, Lorne would be the one to tell you exactly what happened, of course. And Al might remember more about it. But my memory was that, because I told you I was talking to Lorne, and I just didn't feel like, in my mind, I was hoping the show would keep on. Obviously, I'd just been there that 1 year, and the others had been mostly for 5 years and retired, and probably could have felt like they could maybe move on to something else now or whatever. But I had none of those desires at that time. I was glad to be there. It would have been fine to do another year or two. I honestly think that it was sort of a fait accompli at some point. In that, even in during that last show, there was sort of a sense. I mean, the joke being that there's Buck, Lorne, Don Novello, and I worked on that monologue with the new cast. So we wrote that, but it was Lorne's impetus to write that for that show. So it seemed like a fait accompli. I think in Lorne's mind he was gone, and it was probably it would have taken some act of God or Fred Silverman to bring him back. The two were similar at the time, but it would have taken a something like that to have changed the location. Also, Lorne had now the ancillary business of Broadway Video at the Brill Building, which was basically starting up, and he had people over there working there, and offices where we all went basically afterwards.
Right.
So in any case, but at that time, I remember talking to Lorne, and he wasn't sure, frankly, when I was talking to him. But I got the feeling like this is probably it, because it's the whole design of the show is like, this is it, folks, we're leaving, and and then the joke newscast was sort of sarcastically saying, you're not going to get people like you have, so this is the kind of doofuses that are going to come out and perform for you next year. I wouldn't say they were far off. I mean, there were a few wonderful performers, but the overall effect was kind of like a lot of people wondered, honestly, is this the new cast? I mean, people were fooled by that, which is amazing.
Wow.
I mean, we tried to make it so bad that I purposely came out as the worst Groucho impression and tried to, who does Groucho Marx except the worst comic, at a birthday party or something. It's not something that you would do professionally. It's like, this is my act. I do a great Groucho Marx. They won't believe it. No, this is so, and all the people were like PAs, and Walter Williams was, whoever was around wasn't in something else or whatever. There you do with the secretaries, and so it was meant to be like, this is a joke. The fact that people took it seriously at all is kind of amazing.
Yeah, that last episode is really interesting. Like you mentioned, the monologue that you are featured in heavily and co-wrote, and then that good night. Buck Henry's back, of course, for the season finale, and you have that monologue with the quote-unquote new cast, and then the good nights. Infamously, he signs off good night and goodbye, and everyone kind of rushes, leaves the studio, goes out the doors, and that the on-air sign goes off. So I was like, what was that after party like? Just curious, that final season 5 show. What was now that you finished? What was the vibe with everybody?
I think I do remember it now, and I think it was held in Rockefeller Plaza. We set up tables, and now it's coming back to me. Was Andre Crouch on that show? Were they on that show, or was that a different show?
Oh, that might have been them. Yeah.
Yes. All right, because I remember he was there, and the gospel singers. And in any case. Okay, they were there. I remember being at a table with Harry Shearer, a couple other people, and people getting really drunk. But I mean, there wasn't a sense of remorse. It was just exhaustion, I think, for the most part. It was the last show, and I guess it was understood that was the last show for all of the people who were there.
Really?
They were leaving.
They kind of knew, regardless. It was.
Outside of the crew and the cue card people and the prop people, the writers, the staff, the actors and writers who are going to be going along with them.
Got it.
So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if people felt, well, it's okay. We have the safe haven of Broadway Video, and we'll start working on other projects. Because honestly, that's, what was it? That summer of 1980 was the presidential race,
right? The special,
and,
right?
And there was a special planned. I don't know if there's much history on that, but I remember it lasted like a week and a half before it was canceled.
Yeah,
and it was canceled on the basis of the fact that the election was either kind of not of interest to anymore. It wasn't the type of thing that would. I don't know, but that was kind of a surprise and disappointing. I think there was no despair. There was no disappointment. These people everybody was in a great position. If you've been doing Saturday Night Live, or if you do any big show and you get good notices or you get awards or whatever it is, you can write your own ticket in showbiz and TV very often, because the shows that were on then are always looking for who were the hot writers, and that's how I got work initially. I did Lily Tomlin, and from that point on, my partner, we were getting offers from anybody, because that's the nature of the game. So it wasn't like people felt, oh, this is the end of my career or anything.
Right.
I don't know if they just were sorry about the end of Saturday Night Live as they knew it. Don't forget, the show had gone through some tremendous highs and then
oh yeah,
Also, as the ratings went up, the criticism got greater, it seemed, and rightfully so. I think the show was very loose, uh, very hit and miss. Comedy is that way. I think I look back on some of these shows and I scratch my head at some of the choices that were made, my own as well. It's just it's comedy is a it's not a coin toss, but it's close to it. You're not always sure how it's going to play, and that's the success or failure of a piece, whether they like it or not. So you can't talk your way into something being good. But in any case, as for that final season, I don't know. I didn't feel. I don't think we felt lost or at adrift. I think it was for me at least. It was just sort of like, all right, what's next,
Right.
and let's see. I'm here, and a lot of people I think probably look to Lorne to find out what's going on.
Right.
The production company.
And story has it you got a nice parting gift after season 5?
Yes, in fact, I got a nice.
You still have it?
I have it.
Oh my God.
It's a Zippo lighter in the shape of Rockefeller Center, and on the bottom there are two little phrases. Well, one side says Saturday Night Live 75 to 80, and the other side, nice working with you. Which was Lorne's way, I guess, of saying, I'm not going to get all sentimental.
Right.
I'm not sentimental old fluff. I'm just a sarcastic old bastard, just like all of you. So I'm not going to give in to the kind of sentiment people give when they're leaving. So anyway, yes, there's that. So,
Cool.
Something else that was going on in the spring of season 5 was the premiere and the debut of Fridays. How did that affect what you all were going through at SNL at the time?
When Fridays debuted during the 5th season, I was up in Lorne's office. He had this office just above the stage. And Lorne said, I knew he was bitter. We knew, obviously, he was very bitter about the Fridays thing because Bernie Goldstein was his manager.
Yeah.
And he managed Moffat Lee. And he was really bitter that Bernie would do this, that he would try and start a competing show. So he asked me, he said, Matt, I can't. Would you just check on to see what that show is like? And I looked in, and I don't know if I watched much. I don't think I watched more than a few minutes. But I remember seeing their update or their news segment. And here's the joke. There's a picture of Reagan going like this, okay? And it says, coming up, Reagan discusses his sex life. And I go to Lorne and I say, Lorne, Reagan discusses his sex life. And we both nodded at each other because we both understood that that's like a captions courageous, that's the type of thing you go when you're in a double day looking through books and they say, oh, captions courageous. And they have all these silly photos or news photos, but they're silly captions as opposed to, that's all I said. I said to put it at that level, I didn't see anything else on the show, but it was kind of like, between two people, don't worry, you're not being threatened here. Anything terribly sophisticated or deep, there's nothing new here.
Right.
Anyway, it ended. No, I never got the feeling that we were running out of gas at all. I mean, again, I was there just that 1 year, really, and then when that was over, we were over at Broadway Video, and so it was a bunch of people either trying to sell ideas. Now what did happen was they brought in Jean to produce the next year.
Yeah. So did you get asked back when Jean came in?
No. Everybody refused to even consider it, and she knew that probably.
Right.
But she took recommendations. So I recommended Larry and David from Chicken Little.
Mm-hmm.
They got the job, and they were over there. And I went over to see them a couple of times from Broadway Video, and it was a mess. It's a mess because she didn't know what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was sad.
Yeah.
But the real discouraging part came after that. So she left, and Ebersol came in for the next season.
But before season 7, you came back at the end of season 6, right? For that one episode when Ebersol took over with.
All right. So that's it. Okay. So it was one episode.
Yeah.
I came back. I was there for 10 days. Got to know a bunch of new people.
Did O'Donoghue bring you in?
No, I'll tell you the whole story of this, all right? Because it was compacted into 10 days. It was very tumultuous for all of us. I got hired back and it was a really nice salary, much higher than I was paid. Ebersol calls me up and says, would you be interested in coming and doing so? This is before that he took over. And I said, I'll come over and talk to you. And I went over there with a purpose in mind. He had fired Larry and David, okay? And I was pissed, all right? And I went over and I told him what I was telling you about Jean, but I told him in person. I said, you don't have the chops for this. You're not a comedy writer, and you shouldn't be doing this. You should find someone to produce this who's a comedy writer. I wasn't pitching myself. I was just saying, you're the wrong guy. And I told him I resented that he fired Larry and David, and I walked out. And that's how that was left.
So then how is it that you ended up actually back on the show?
Soon after that, my mother in Miami at the time had a big rent raise, tripled. And I was sort of helping her out. I wasn't making any money. I needed to make something. And I decided I better take that job because it was offering like a huge amount of money per week to do that. And he really wanted someone from the original show to come there. So I go back over there and he said, I want you to do the show? Okay, I'll do it. And I'll say this for him. He never had a grudge about anything I said to him about all of that. He took it for what it's worth, and maybe more power to him. So I went over there, and he introduced me as Matt Neuman. He wrote on the show. If you have any questions of how things might have been done or whatever, you can ask him. And I remember sitting down and telling Joe Piscopo, just one thing, do me a favor, don't ever do the two people from Jersey. I said, if you ever do that, I'll throw something at you. I said, that's terrible. And I just went around, and I just told them what I thought of the stuff that they had either done or the problems with how they were doing it. Pretty arrogant of me maybe to do that, but the fact is it was sort of a mess. I liked Eddie. I got along with him. I was there for 10 days, and then I had some real run-ins with O'Donoghue. He came in, Bob Tischler was there. Now, O'Donoghue, I didn't know him very well. He wasn't on the show in the 5th season. Mm-hmm. I got to know him a little bit when I did Bob and Ray, because everyone was hanging out around that time, and they were still around. But I always thought of him sort of, at the time, as sort of a poseur, guy who wanted to look like James Joyce or dress like some, intellectual dandy of the 20s. But I knew where he was from because I also was old enough to know the background of the Evergreen Review and from the Greenwich Village period, that type of thing. And I associated him with that, with the New York period. So I could respect his writing chops from that area, but I didn't know about his comedy writing chops. I wasn't sure. His writing wasn't like one-act plays per se. They were an idea carried to its, it's the guy with the thing. It led to a conclusion. So I had my issues at the time. He comes in, and he was like sort of the de facto head writer for this. Mm-hmm. So he comes into my office, and we weren't friends and hadn't really spent much time working ever on anything. And he said, we're trying to come up with an ending. I said, what do you mean you're trying to come up with? We're trying to come up with an ending for that piece with the lunchroom thing. And they had Del Close from Second City, the famous Second City guy. He was there in a room with all the actors trying to brainstorm an ending for my piece. And I found it so offensive. And I got really mad at him. I said, and I told Michael, I said, Michael, this whole act and everything, I don't buy it. I don't really, I said, if you just come to me and ask, I'm a comedy writer, right? I've done this a million times. I've had 10 endings for things. You can just say, we need like a better ending. I said, okay, great. I agree with you. I'd like to come up with a better ending too. Give me 5 minutes, all right? But don't, spend all afternoon in a room with a bunch of people trying to spitball ideas for something I think I know what I'm doing. And he got so mad, he kicked a hole in the wall. He literally kicked a hole through the wall. Yeah. So what I did, I wrote an ending. I remember it was just, okay, this is the way it ends. Boom. And I said, great. And that's how that show is being done. Mm-hmm. Also, I was there when Michael did his Vikings funeral act, which I don't know if you've heard about, and this thing where he spray painted the wall.
Danger on the wall.
And I was sitting there. He came in after I had already been hired, but he came in with Tischler after that. And it was his pep talk to all these people. And he says, this show is going to go down in flames. It's going to go down like a Viking funeral. All right. He was very, crazy. And I just sat there like, and after he was done, I said, Michael, you're really mellowed. and I got up and I walked out. I said, that's fine. And the show was on us, of course, on Saturday night. The Writers Guild strike started at midnight that night. I couldn't go in. So I heard Chevy started writing stuff. And that was the last I ever remember about that show. I don't even remember if that sketch was done. Probably not. And that's how it went for several months as that strike wore on. And I assumed I'd get hired back when it started up again. And when I got an offer, and I was desperate for money at this time because I needed to help out my mom. I had to borrow some money. I had to pay the rent and what was going to stay. And I was literally getting I had 2 major anxiety attacks during this period, just from the fact that what happened was they offered like a third of what the salary was when I was there, for whatever reason. And that freaked me out. And so I got in touch with John Moffat, who was the director of the Lily Tomlin show. And I knew he was producing Fridays. And I said, John, you got any room for another writer? I think I'd like to go back to LA. He said, okay, we'll send some stuff. Sent him 10 things. They liked it. And so I was fine with that. And I went back to LA.
And then, so how long did you spend on Fridays then?
Well, I got there in the second year,
right?
Probably in the middle of the second year. I wasn't there very long. And when I showed up, same scene, John says, everybody, we got somebody who worked on Saturday Night Live now. First time we're going to Friday. So now again, I'm the guy from Saturday Night Live.
You're the only one. The only one to go from SNL to Fridays.
I was. But I got there after Jack Burns had left, which was probably a good thing, because I thought that was kind of hokey and old. That was like a mismatch. Right. He was from an older school of stand-ups, and they were trying to do a show like SNL. John wanted me to tell them how they did the SNL show, But the first thing I noticed was they would have a writers' meeting, okay? They had a writers' meeting. And I said, one thing we didn't do, we didn't sit down and have a writers, at least when I was there, we never sat down and tried to come up with ideas in a writers' meeting.
Right. That's
a bad practice, I find, because you'll have some writers say, no, that's stupid. Or, some people can take offense and have, it's not everyone has a tough skin.
Yeah.
And I saw that at Friday sometimes, because they would have the writers go over the material sometimes and comment upon it, which we never did at SNL. At the read-throughs, no one said, oh, I don't like, oh, that's no good, or that's great. They said nothing. You read it, moved on to the next. Lorne was going to decide, anyway, you could tell it was working or it wasn't. But you wouldn't say, oh, that stinks, or that's not a good job. But what I loved about Fridays was that they let you do pretty much anything, and I had some very elaborate ideas. I'm not so sure I was crazy about everything I wrote on that show, but I loved the fact that they were willing to do it.
We should say Fridays, not necessarily the news, Hollywood Squares.
Don't mention Hollywood Squares, but the rest is good.
Matt, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Congratulations also on wrapping up Ironic Times this past year, your online newspaper for 25 years. That was great.
Yeah, that's another, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. It's 25 years of weekly.
Wow.
It's still up there, yeah.
It's still up.
It's still up there, and the Chicken Little sketches are up there. If you go on YouTube, you can find tons of the Chicken Little sketches.
Some Chicken Little, yeah. I have some early stuff that probably didn't send in.
This was great, Matt. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Matt.
Appreciate it. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you, guys.
That was a great talk with Matt Neuman. He has so many stories. It was amazing. I mean, that's just an amazing career he's had.
Yeah, it was. And what I like talking to him most about is we've talked to other people, but they'd been on the show for a while, so that exhaustion had set in. So I really liked the chance we got to talk to Matt, who just came in kind of a little bit more fresher eyes to really talk about season 5. And he knew what was season 5 because he wasn't getting confused with any other seasons or anything like that. So it was really fun to talk about strictly season 5 stuff and get his take on the end, like when everything wrapped up and that season 5 finale that he's featured in, the monologue he helped write. So it was a really fun conversation to get all that.
That was great. Thanks for joining us. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Good night, and have a pleasant tomorrow.